And welcome to another broadcast. I'm Caroline Flanagan. I'm a certified coach. I'm creator of the Imposter Speech and author of Be the First. I had such an awesome Friday night last week where I had the book launch party. If you follow me on social media, I'm not sure if I posted yet actually on Facebook, but you will have seen some posts on LinkedIn and maybe Instagram as well about the book launch party, which was absolutely amazing. So big shout out to those of you who were there, those of you who were supporting me through social media. It was amazing. How are you all doing? It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening. I've just checked in with the Facebook feed and saw that I was meant to be going live at 6:30. Well, what can I say? Nobody is perfect. And I'm going to be a fine example to you all and not beat myself up for being half an hour late. It's actually very unusual being a Tuesday for me. Normally I do the lives on a Monday evening at 5 o'clock. So I think it must have been the time that blew me away. And also, I have not long ago finished coaching just the most amazing, most brilliant one of my clients. She's come to the end of her imposter speech program, the imposter speech program that I'm so excited about, that I talk about all the time, and what the imposter speech can do for you if you have imposter syndrome. I work with lawyers who have imposter syndrome, who want to stop overworking, stop overthinking, and start getting the recognition that they deserve. And this client has been just such an example of what is possible for you if you have imposter syndrome, but also an example of the power of the imposter speech. I am just bursting with joy and with pride for her this evening. It's been amazing. So I don't know what it's like where you are. It's pretty dark here and very dark outside. So I've got as much light on me as possible. So hopefully you can see me and you'll be able to follow me as we talk about tonight's topic, which is all about knowing, or rather specifically, the fact that knowing is not enough. So there's a question going across there at the bottom of the screen saying, do you always worry that you don't know enough? It's something I see all the time. It's something I experience so often. I've got a couple of presentations coming up and I'm having that little imposter syndrome moment where I'm thinking, I don't know enough. This is going to be really hard. I haven't got all the knowledge. And I'm tempted to go searching for more knowledge, to try and find out more information in an attempt to just feel more secure, more sure about what I'm doing. And what I want to say to you today in this message is that no amount of adding knowledge to your brain is going to be enough when you have imposter syndrome. Now, what I want to introduce this topic with is the story of one of my clients, a male client. And what he does is he worries a lot about his client meetings. He worries about, well, before he gets into the client meeting, he worries he's not going to have anything to say or he's not going to know the answer. When he's in the client meeting, he then worries that, he'll answer a question and then he'll then worry that he's answered it incorrectly. So he's constantly worrying about either not knowing enough or he's worrying about, I think my husband's at the door, banging at the door, trying to get in. Right, hang on there 1 second while I let him in. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Oh, let you in. Read the Facebook Live. Okay, I'm here. Ta-da! Right, if you're watching this without sound, then you'll have to put the sound on to find out what happened. I'm back. So my client over worrying about, ahead of client meetings, about not knowing the answer, but also worrying while he's in the client meeting about what he's saying, whether he's saying the right thing, whether he's saying it well enough. Does that ring any bells? Are you ever in a meeting sitting there thinking, I should be saying something, but worried you don't know what to say? Or maybe you're in a meeting and you're saying something, but the whole time you're criticizing yourself internally about how you're saying it and what you're saying. I know quite a few of you out there do this all of the time. Now, here's the really interesting thing about this particular client. When I engage him about this issue and about what's behind that feeling, that fear that he doesn't know enough, or that he might say the wrong thing or say the right thing in the wrong way, what he says to me is always very curious. He'll say, I know I'm a good lawyer, but it's just I worry I won't know what to say. I know I'm great at my job, but it's just that when I'm in a meeting, I get really anxious. Yeah. I know I'm the right person to work on this deal. It's just that when I'm drafting a document or when I'm in a meeting discussing it, I get worried that I'm going to deliver the wrong answer. Now, what you can hear in that are two very conflicting states. The one is this so-called knowledge that he is good enough, and the other is the belief that completely undermines what he thinks he knows. So he thinks he knows he's good at his job, but actually he doesn't truly believe it. Now, this whole concept of thinking something about yourself but not truly believing it is one of the secret signs of imposter syndrome that I'm going to be talking about over the coming weeks. It's number, I think, 56. If you look in on the Facebook page, the Caroline Flanagan, no, in the Imposter Speech group. If you're not a member, then please come over and join. It's called the Imposter Speech Imposter Syndrome group. Come and join us if you want to hear more about imposter syndrome and how I can help you turn it into a strength. So one of the secret symptoms of imposter syndrome is this kind of knowing something intellectually, but deep down inside, you don't believe it. And how you know you don't truly believe it is because how you behave and how you feel when you're behaving that way doesn't feel like someone who's coming from a place of certainty and of confidence. So the first thing I want to say to you today is that idea that you can know that you're good at something, but you behave in a certain way should reveal to you how your brain is working. It's trying to kind of wash over the self-doubt that's happening inside of you. It's trying to kind of whitewash that over with a kind of positive statement that I know I'm good at something. And what I'm here to tell you is that won't work. If underneath it all, how you believe and how you feel is different, then no amount of trying to talk yourself into saying you're a good lawyer is going to work. That's the first thing. The second thing that I want you to take away from this session is that, well, not that you probably need reminding, but I'm going to remind you anyway, but the fact that if you have imposter syndrome, no amount of knowledge will ever be enough. So it's taking what I've said about knowing a certain thing about yourself and broadening that out into not just what you say you know about yourself, but also what you believe you know about perhaps the subject you're talking about your area of expertise. Imposter syndrome, if you remember a message that I repeatedly teach you, it doesn't care about the truth. It doesn't care how impressive your track record is. It doesn't care what grades you got when you were at university. It doesn't care how brilliant your client or your boss or your colleagues or your husband or your mum think you are and tell you repeatedly. It doesn't care about the truth. The whole point of imposter syndrome is that you struggle to internalize your success. You question your right to be there. And that's how imposter syndrome functions. Now, here's the good news. The good news is we don't have to try and change that. Imposter syndrome isn't something that you need to fix because it's something that's broken in you or it's a problem. The way I've found the most powerful strategy for dealing with imposter syndrome is to acknowledge it, to honor it, to recognize it. Oh, that's my imposter syndrome talking. To put it, for those of you who work with me in a coaching scenario, and I've taught you the model, it's putting imposter syndrome in the C line as just a set of thoughts that it happens to be in your nature to have about yourself. You don't have to make that a good or a bad thing. In fact, you get to totally choose what you make your imposter syndrome mean. So knowledge then isn't the point. Growing your knowledge, extending your knowledge, going away and thinking, if I could just learn more, if I could just work harder, then I'll feel more confident about myself. It's not going to work. It might top up your knowledge in some ways. It might give you a little bit of short-term help, but it's not going to solve the puzzle of your imposter syndrome. Which begs the question, well, what is? And that brings me back to the imposter speech that I created for you, because the imposter speech is all about creating 100% belief in who you are. And how we do that is we look at the 5 different core elements of who you are. What makes you who you are? We look at all of that and we build belief around each of those different elements, so that in what you're left with is this incredibly empowering, authentic speech that, in my client's words just an hour or so ago, was about geeing you up, but actually just giving you access to your most powerful self. Now, all of that might sound, if you're new to my work, new to the speech, it might sound a bit wishy-washy. I promise you, the imposter speech is everything but. It is very, very practical. It's a very structured process that you work through in order to arrive at this speech. And the point is, you then have this tool to apply and to use in any scenario. How does that help you? When you're feeling nervous about going into a meeting, when you're speaking up, trying to find the courage to speak up, and you're questioning whether you should, or you're judging the way you're speaking. What the imposter speech does, and its power, is it reminds you to step out of the detail and the weeds of, am I saying the right thing? Do I know what I'm talking about? How do I do this? It takes you out of that, out of the what and the how, and it puts you into the who. In other words, it reminds you of who you are and gives you access to the highest level of who you are. In other words, it gives you access to the version of you that knows the level you are at is a stepping stone on a journey, right? That's going to take you to the next level, but also as progress from the previous level that you were at. It's access to the person, the power in you that comes from knowing exactly why you are in that position, going into that meeting, trying to speak up. What has driven you driven you along that journey, and what is the real motivation for you for being there, for wanting to do it right. It gives you access to the version of yourself that has been through so much before you got where you are today. The challenges that you have had to overcome, the setbacks that you've faced, the barriers you've encountered. The imposter speech gives you access to that too. It also gives you access, and this is all part of the structured approach, to where you are going, what it's all about, what it's all for. All of that is what makes up who you are at your highest level, at the level at which you are performing to your very best, performing to your potential. So in those moments, as I've taught my client, we're working on together, as I use for myself, in those moments where I'm afraid or anxious about doing something, because I worry I don't know enough. In the moments when you are feeling afraid and anxious because you don't know enough, and you're about to rush off and try and top up your knowledge and spend more and more time getting wound up about not knowing enough, I want you to ground yourself. Think about your imposter syndrome, acknowledge it as just a part of who you are. It's not a problem, it's nothing you need to fix. But know that it's just the puzzle, it's just the question of who you are. You being asked that question, and your only job is to answer it from your most powerful place, from the place, all of those things that I've told you that make up the imposter speech. And when you step into being that person, just as you're about to go into a meeting, a client meeting or an interview or whatever it is, when you step into that person and you believe and you show up and you speak from the energy of that person, your highest level person of who you are. When you communicate from there, you make decisions from there, you do your thinking from there, how you show up is going to be more than enough. Now, I'm not saying knowledge is irrelevant. I'm not saying having the facts isn't important, but I want you to approach that knowledge and those facts as something that is part of what you have to offer, or what you bring to the table. And I want you to know that on its own, that knowledge doesn't work. It won't get you there, and it won't communicate the information that you need to get across. More important, and in order to bolster that knowledge, that the very foundation of what you do has to be built on who you are, and your ability to access that highest self, highest version of yourself in those moments when you need it. That's it from me on knowledge being, well, not enough. To all of you who always worry that you don't know enough, I'm just going to check here that I haven't got any comments that I've missed. Yeah, anytime you're worried that you don't know enough, stop for a minute before you rush off and try to top up your knowledge. Remind yourself, it's not so much about what you know. It's so much, it depends on who you are being in that moment. And the imposter speech I created is to help you be that person you need to be at your very highest level, so you can get the results that you want. That's it from me. Any comments, any thoughts about knowledge not being enough, about what the imposter syndrome, the imposter speech could do for you, or any questions whatsoever that you may have about imposter syndrome? You can find me in the Imposter Syndrome Facebook group, or you can join, please come on over to the Imposter Syndrome page, my Caroline Flanagan page. Give me a like, send me some questions, let me know what you thought of this. Have a beautiful evening, everybody. I will see you next week at the normal time on Monday at 5 o'clock, I think is the time. Check the feed to get the exact details. That's it from me. Bye. Thank you.